Welcome to Things I Wish I Knew, the podcast from Thinking Faith, a work of the Jesuits in Britain. I'm Julia, I'm in my early 30s, and I used to live in a Jesuit young adult community. We all live hectic lives and often don't get time to reflect on what's happening both to us and around us. This podcast is meant to help you to take a moment to stop and think about where you are, where you're going, and where your relationship with God fits into it all. Every week I'll meet a new guest who tells me about something they've experienced which changed their life forever. And by talking about the things they'd wished they'd known at the time, we'll explore the idea that God is in all things. And we'll talk about the part that faith plays in navigating life challenges. Today I'm speaking to Justin about loneliness. Justin is a Jesuit priest from Los Angeles, living in the UK studying art. I love talking to him because I think his experience is so relatable. I'm sure at times we've all felt lonely, and his perspective on it as a Jesuit priest really challenged me. So Justin, when have you experienced loneliness?
Like the last time I noticed it, I was in the first semester of my program here in London, and I remember feeling a bunch of different things. There was a lot wrapped up in it. One was moving into a new city, not feeling like I'm connecting deeply with my peers, and not feeling like I'm spending enough time with my community, my Jesuit brothers. And I also remember going into the tube and realizing that I'm training myself not to notice anybody. And it just became this expectation. And I'm like, wow, and not to say anything to anybody except sorry, and not to notice anybody. I'm like, wow, this is a new experience. But I would say that the loneliest times of my life, so notice being lonely, the loneliest times of my life, one was when I was doing my year of Regency, the Jesuit training work period.
What is Regency?
Yeah, Regency is the period in Jesuit priestly formation between philosophy studies and theology studies. We have a period of full-time work where we can live with Jesuits and work in usually Catholic or Jesuit institutions. And so I did 1 year of this work experience in the Philippines with the Philippine Jesuit Prison Service, working in the National Bilibid prisons in Manila. And I remember that being an especially lonely time in my life. So that's always a place where I can go back to learn something about loneliness. The other time, honestly, was during the pandemic and after ordination and becoming a priest. There was, of course, the really beautiful consolation of ordination, but it was mixed also with this strange experience of the pandemic that we were all experiencing and lockdown. And my first masses as a priest were in an empty church with a phone camera, and trying to find ways to connect with parishioners without actually seeing them in person. But then just this long period of understanding my role and my responsibility toward the people of God. And that is kind of couched in with a lot. Yeah, there was just a lot of shifting understandings and narratives of what I was telling myself who I was and what other people were telling me they wanted me to be. And so that was a lonely time as well, but a beautiful time and a very instructive time, I think. I can say that now looking back on it and always looking at it with the eyes of faith.
Yeah, I was going to say it's always easiest to look back on situations, isn't it? So I guess in that situation of you just having been ordained during lockdown or during COVID meant that you suddenly became this new role without the community to support you.
Yeah.
How was that? The
community, they were as supportive as they could be. Given the circumstances, they were also, it was such a beautiful time, the first few months. And it was such an awkward time as well, because as we moved from lockdown to outdoor masses, there was a lot involved there with setting up and getting to know people, but only seeing half their faces because everyone had masks on. So I remember the time when I finally got to see the parishioners' full faces. It was like getting to know a new person. And on top of that, and this is interesting too, that both in the Philippines and in the parish where I served, there were language barriers or there were language challenges. In the Philippines, it was with Tagalog and Filipino, and in my parish, it was with Spanish. And I was basically just learning Spanish on the fly, on the job. So that can be a very lonely experience because when when you're in physical proximity with someone, there's still kind of a distance of understanding and like desire to connect. It takes that much more effort when you're not understanding each other. But they were so accommodating to me. Like, I think the only reason why I picked up Spanish is because they were so patient and they wouldn't shame me for getting anything wrong, and they would help me along sometimes with the words, or they would try to so hard to understand me when I was speaking such broken Spanish to them. So it was really a work of love on their part. I really believe that when priests are ordained and they give themselves over to the community, like the community is who forms them to be priests, because we are all priests by our baptism, and so like the ones who are ordained and for the ministerial priesthood are reflections, I think, of all of our baptismal priesthood. But it was a lonely time because of the shift of identity, I guess. My name also doesn't really translate neatly into Spanish. Going from Justin to Justino sounded a bit weird because I never was called Justino growing up. And then on top of that, there's always the shorthand. It's like, well, they don't need to know my name. They can just call me Padre, And then I could always just call this person Señora or this person Señor, or all those very polite ways of relating to people. There's a distance there, but there's also an acknowledgement of responsibility. Like, okay, if you're Padre, I tacitly expect a certain way of comporting and behaving and service. And that's cool because that's what holy orders are. But then it can be, I know that in my job and in my role as a priest, I'm not looking to be best friends with everybody. I'm at your service. I'm at the service of all. And that's what Jesus has called me to do. So the feeling of loneliness creeps up when either I collapse myself into my role so that I am only Father Justin and nobody knows Justin, just knows Father. Oh crap! I'm not connecting with anybody on a deep and emotionally vulnerable, intimate level. But the loneliness can also creep up just on the basic things about not connecting when it comes to the language, and not having and failing to find ways to find time to be with my friends who have known me for a long time, who do know me as Justin, who have known me before I was a Jesuit, who knew me through the formation. And I have my best Jesuit friends and my friends from high school, family members, and all these sort of things, which they're there in Los Angeles. But my priority especially was to be with the people of God who are even now going through a deep crisis. So being able to work with the loneliness and through the loneliness and find that connection was a challenge. And I'm still not quite sure if I've really processed all of that yet, honestly.
That does sound like a lot to process.
Yeah.
So how do you feel like people could have supported you more?
Well, they did. They honestly did everything they could, really. They honestly did everything they could. The people of God, like I said, they taught me Spanish. They fed me really delicious Mexican food,
I'm sure you weren't complaining about that.
Oh my gosh, so much good food. The pupusas and the tacos, the enchiladas, and just lots of love. Just lots of love.
I think my question is coming from, you're making me think, because I have 3 good friends who I've known since, one since I was much younger and then 2 since university. And they've now all become ordained, which is a real blessing for us all. But I'm now wondering, could I be a better friend to them?
Oh, okay. So there's already the history of that relationship.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. I don't know where I would be if I didn't have friends who also did come to check up on me, And in some ways, it's even better that I had a lot of non-Catholic friends growing up in high school. So the whole Jesuit priest thing didn't really hold the same sort of contextual weight for them as it did for a lot of my Catholic friends or my Jesuit friends. So they were able to approach me knowing, the ex-goth punk kid from the suburbs that they knew, and for them to reach out, for you to reach out to your friends. There was a mentor priest, he was a guy who I really look up to as a priest, a Monsignor over in Los Angeles. And he told me the story one time of when he went to a retreat house for priests in Los Angeles, and he was talking about his, what he was going through and everything. And the elderly priest who was at the retreat center looked at him and he's like, you know what's the most important thing in life? He's like, what is it, Father? It's like, friends. And I kept that in me because that's like friends, real friends can get you through so much, you know? Like if you are friends with these guys, you know them and you see them, like you really see them, for them to feel seen, it's a great consolation. It's a great consolation. But I don't think it's necessarily I don't think it is incumbent upon, you know, an average parishioner, you know, to make sure that their, you know, that their father or that their priest, you know, is, you know, to fulfill that role for them. I think that would be, there's a lot there when it comes to like safeguarding and boundaries and things like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think we all have times in our lives when we feel lonely?
I'd like to think so, but maybe there are people who don't. Like, I don't want to speak for them, but it seems like a bit of a bad word to even mention it in public. But I mean, I'd ask you. Well, I can't speak for everyone, but have you felt lonely?
Oh yeah, I would say that I definitely have. For me, there's two like very clear times I remember it. Both when I was studying, so I have my undergraduate and my master's, so one of each. In my master's, I remember there was a stage where I had people around me, so it wasn't like I was alone. It was just like I had this time of loneliness where I was just not sure what I was going to do afterwards, and I didn't know where my life was going, and like I didn't really know who I could talk to or share that with, and eventually I worked out I could share it with Jesus.
Okay.
But you know, like I just remember that feeling quite lonely in that making those decisions.
Yeah.
And I did have people I could like share with, but it felt like it had to be a decision I had to come to myself, like make myself. And I remember in my undergraduate definitely feeling loneliness. I think that was more to do with I was on a path of I'm going to university, and then I got there and I was suddenly like, I'm here now, but what do I do? Because my whole life had been built to be going to university. I remember kind of feeling that I don't really have friends where I am. Eventually I made them. I'm not going to pretend I was sad and lonely the whole time, but I just had that what was the expectation on me now? Because the expectation I'd had on myself for so long was I was going to university, and then I was there. And then what next?
What next?
What am I doing here, etc.
So in that university experience, can you notice a time when that passed, when the loneliness passed?
I don't know if there was a particular time. I think I ended up like a bit like you were saying with rock climbing. I got involved in different activities and made friends, and I think for me one of the things was going to our Catholic chaplaincy and making friends there, and I ended up being president of our Catholic society, which won't surprise anyone, but I think one of the challenges I found in that was Catholics have only really one thing in common, which is that they believe in God or Jesus, and they go to mass. Yeah. But then if you try and find like links with outside of that, it's quite challenging to get a group of them together. It's not like we all like swimming, or we all like, I don't know, roller skating,
or the same kind of music, or something. Yeah.
So there's also a challenge in that, in terms of how do you unite people outside of church as well.
Oh yeah, that goes. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Going into that's why there's also that question about, well, and what do we do within the church? And there's also that tension. Then, like I was like, well, now that you know you have this thing in common with you're connected with everyone there, well, then you can be the leaven for all the connections outside where you do have something else in common, but maybe you don't have in common the Catholic faith or something like that. Well, I do share the same musical loves as this other person and a friend of mine, but at least I'm rooted here, you know?
Yeah, that's a really good way of thinking, actually, of being rooted in your Catholic faith, but then being able to share it and share other interests as well with other people.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. No, that's beautiful. And I think that's really honest. And part of me feels like, why do I think loneliness is a dirty word, or lonely is a dirty word? And maybe if we all talked about our experiences of loneliness, like you just shared very generously with me, maybe everyone would feel a little less lonely, and it would feel a little bit more like a normal experience rather than an aberrant sort of thing. It's like no one would judge me if I said, oh, I'm hungry right now,
Yeah. And I think my question earlier of like, do you think everyone feels lonely? Coming from that is, I think everyone does. Like the amount of conversations I have with people where they're like, there's a real like loneliness in this country. And particularly if you're living in London, people feel it.
Yeah.
So many conversations I have that people have this real desire for community.
Yeah.
But partly that comes from that feeling of loneliness.
Yeah. And I hate to say it in a crass way, but like I think that's a good thing. I think it's people getting in touch with the heart. It's like, yeah, we're not self-sufficient. We're in a big city now. We're trained to be polite. I'm trained to not look at people, and trained to say sorry anytime I need to bump into somebody. Like I'm not touching anyone, you know what I mean? And even now, it's like I'm come from a hugging culture, and for now to be just like handshakes and everything is already kind of like, oh, that's kind of interesting, where there's all of this like mitigation of connection for some good reasons, I guess, of tolerance and proper, propriety and things like that. But this hunger for community I think it's tapping into who we're made to be. We're made to be like God and to give ourselves to other people and to receive other people as God receives other people.
So what would you say to someone who wakes up feeling that loneliness? What should they do? How should they reach out?
Well, I think first it's, we have so many resources in faith, and it sounds a bit trite, but the first thing is prayer. In being in the Ignatian world, we trade in all of these Jesuitical type things, and one of the great gifts that St. Ignatius gave the church, he gave all people, was this prayer of the Examen, where we don't use formulas to pray like the Our Father, the Hail Mary, the Glory Be, but we use our memories, we use our life, we use our situations to pray. So people who wake up feeling that can pray and examine. Look at the relationships that you have in your life. Who are the people that you feel most distant to, that you wish you were closer to? Who are the people that are close to you in proximity, but you feel far from in terms of your heart? And Pope Francis talks a lot about this in his last encyclical, De Lexit Nos, which is on the Sacred Heart. He uses the image of the heart and the symbol of the heart to sort of connect everything. So a very simple question is like, how is your heart? Where is your heart? Have you felt connected with somebody on that heart level recently? When was the last time you did? What was that like? And who are the people that you would like to connect to in your heart? To tell your griefs, your hopes, your joys, your sorrows. So that's one practical thing, starting with that self-reflection. Another thing that I do, looking back on it, something that really helped is making a list of all the people that I want to pray for. A lot of them, of course, are friends and family, but for all the time now, it's always people that I'm in proximity with, people at work, people at school, people in my community, just physically writing out their names, and in my prayers, actually praying for them, saying their names. And it's even just saying their names, and even the people far away from me, people I don't know, the people who are suffering in Gaza, people that are suffering in Los Angeles, people who are suffering in prison, so many anonymous people. I don't know what it is, but I feel some sense of connection there with these people. And especially when I start to pray the names of people who care about me, who love me. So that's another practical thing. So there's the self-reflection, there's the prayer. And then there's praying for ourselves to have courage. Because I think when I'm lonely, the emotion I would most associate with that would be a sort of a low-grade fear, maybe an anxiety. Maybe I'm afraid of rejection in any kind of form. Maybe somebody doesn't actually want to hang out with me, or people don't think that I'm worth spending time with. And I start to notice these thoughts that start to spiral and become a self-fulfilling prophecy when I start isolating. So instead, to cut that off and to ask for the grace of courage, and to ask for the grace and the virtue of fortitude, and to practice connecting with people. When's the last time you spoke with your best friend? If you don't live with them, when's the last time you spoke with them? Actually reaching out, sending a WhatsApp text, or actually giving a call, or writing a letter, writing an email. Who's somebody in my life that could be feeling lonely right now. Maybe it's somebody at my school, or maybe it's somebody on the street, or somebody that I see often. Like, what can I do to reach out to them? Because then it's not. So then my loneliness doesn't become the reason for me to reach out to people like it's, they're supposed to solve my problem, like it's a transaction. But it's like, well, now this is a call for me to notice this in other people, that other people are having this problem too. And Lord, what can I do to help them, to lighten their burden? Because by doing that, I actually find that I feel it less myself. And that was true even in the darkest moments of my early priesthood, and even in the Philippines when I was working in prison. Like, I felt lonely, and then in prayer I realized, well, guess what? Prisoners feel lonely too. You know what I mean? And then what can I do now that I can connect with them on that heart level? What can I do now to help relieve their burden? And then I found myself even more intimately connected with that. And I was like, okay, so then it sort of passes. Just like when I drink water after I'm thirsty, like I don't feel that thirst anymore. When I'm not sort of worried about myself and my loneliness anymore, and I'm actually connecting with other people and I'm helping other people, then I don't feel that. Bracketing any psychological things that could be at play with people, because I don't want to discount that too. Sometimes loneliness, there's probably some biochemical things that could affect that as well.
In some ways, you've kind of preempted what I was about to ask you, which is like, so I was just thinking about how the easiest thing to do is, if you're feeling lonely, is like reach out to like 10 people and be like, I'm feeling lonely. Come talk to me. Come
Maybe
give
not
me
say
benefit.
It like that.
Like, do you know what? Like, I mean, don't phrase it like that.
Right,
but
right.
I mean, like, that's what you're essentially doing. You're trying to get these people, and which is great, because obviously that helps with the loneliness. But as you kind of mentioned, there's then the challenge of then your relationships become quite transactional.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like maybe not a lot, but some people, when they're feeling lonely, the next thing they do is go on a dating app, or they like look for someone to get romantically interested in. And then that becomes almost transactional. So have you got any advice, maybe not on the dating app specifically, but how do you build that relationship intentionally, whether romantic or friendship, without it becoming transactional? It's being, I need it now because I'm feeling lonely. But also like benefits both sides.
Saint, or not saint, he's not a saint, very much not a saint, but he influenced a lot of saints. The philosopher Aristotle, he leave it to a Jesuit to reference philosophy on a talk about these things. But something I found useful in my philosophy studies and reading Aristotle, he has a whole book in his ethics treatise dedicated to friendship. And he has 3 categories of friends. The first category is friendship of utility. Second category is friendship of pleasure. Third category, friendship of virtue. I'm not an expert on parsing it all out, but the easiest way of interpreting it, the friendship of utility is like, well, we're friends because like we're both useful to each other, or you're useful to me, and I can be useful to you. So that could be like friends who are classmates because like, hey, like you have the notes that I didn't take, and I can borrow those. Hey, how can I be helpful to you? And maybe I can buy you lunch or something like that. We're friends in a certain sense. And friendship of pleasure, it's like, okay, we enjoy doing the same thing. So I have my rock climbing friends. It's like, well, friendship of utility and friendship of pleasure, because don't drop me from the rock, but also like we enjoy doing this thing and we can connect on that level. And sometimes these friendships can build on each other. That's the thing that I think is worth noting too. It can start maybe seeming like this transactional thing, like, oh, there's a usefulness to this relationship. And then it's like, well, not only is it useful, like this relationship that I have with you, it's also pleasant and we enjoy being around each other. But then the way that I think we are all called to go to is to the friendship of virtue, to self-giving love, where then it's not about, it's not, I love you because I need you, but it's like, I need you because I love you. There is something about how I want to give myself to you and how I see that you're giving yourself to me, that there is the need that's created not out of any sort of transactional thing, but because I choose freely to do that. So that's one thing that I would say. So to not be afraid of starting with a little bit of that transactional mentality. If it stays there, then maybe that's not maybe a friendship recognizing that that's what it is. It's like, okay, like to use that image again, it's like, well, my climbing buddies, like I'm not going to be best friends with a lot of them, but it's really great to have climbing buddies. It's like we can talk about this and we can go out and we can have fun. That's great. And I could still pray for them though. We're all, we're still called to be Christians in that sense. But to be wary of staying at the transactional level, and then to get out of myself enough to think about, well, what is it that they need? That's the one ultimate way of kind of being able to challenge, letting the Holy Spirit see beyond myself, helping me to look beyond myself and be like, yeah, we met each other in this sense, but what is this person actually going through right now? How is their heart? Like I knew that my heart was feeling empty or restless or disconnected or lonely, but how's your heart doing? Like, tell me about what you're interested in. Tell me about your joys, your hopes, your griefs, your sorrows, and be interested and want to hear it, and even try to delight in it and see them as Jesus sees them. Because that's the ultimate corrective lens that we can put on anything. It's like, how does the Holy Spirit lead me to see this person? And it's usually not as a means to my end. It's usually as an end in themselves. Like God delights in me, and God delights in you as we are. And we'll love what James Allison says. It's like God doesn't just love you; He likes you. Like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like I want to believe in a God who likes me as I am, even in the times when I don't think that other people like me as I am. Because when I really believe that, God likes me. God likes me as I am. Like I can kind of relax into liking other people as they are, and not sort of using them to cover up whatever holes that I feel that I have in my heart. Does that make sense? Is that a little too heady? I'm trying to think of a concrete example.
No, that makes sense. I feel like it's a big challenge for each of us, like to think about that actually God likes us, and to think about that God also likes that other person, and particularly when it's a person that you butt heads against.
Yeah.
Like, to think of that as God likes both of them, both you and that person, and how do you acknowledge that in that time?
Yeah, and that's, honestly, my shortcut to that is, it's a bit of a cop-out, but it's honestly prayer. Because a meditative kind of prayer where I'm connecting with the source of my life, and I'm looking upon Christ, who looks upon me with the sort of knowing smile or smirk or whatever. It's like, well, okay, show me how you see this person who I want to be more patient with, or show me how you see this person who I do want to get to know more. It's coming to realize and coming to see how Christ sees me and Christ sees other people and feels for them has been a huge help to me. Because then I'm not talking about loneliness, right? Like it's not me just looking at something by myself. I'm looking at it with Christ. I'm looking at them with Christ's eyes. And just like how you and a friend can sit on a bench and just sort of watch the world go by and like look at all the people walking around and everything like that. Like we can do that in prayer. Like we can do that. We can sit down on the bench with Jesus and be like, look at all the people in our lives that are walking by in the park right now. Like, what do you think? How do you feel about them? Like, how do you feel about me as we're sitting here together? Like that kind of stuff. It's good to sort of rewire my perception and rewire my brain when it comes to that kind of thing.
I was just challenged in my own head there of like the times, particularly in my early 20s, where I'd sit on a bench and look at people with another friend, and we'd be like, are they on a first date, a second date, been married for 10 years? Maybe I should have been thinking what was more Jesus' perspective on it than that fun game. But
well, yeah, but it's that same idea though. It's like, what is your best guess on how God looks upon God's creation? And even then, if you want to have a playful conversation like that, why not have a playful conversation like that with Jesus? You know what I mean? Oh, are they first dates? And I think, I don't know, I like to believe in a Jesus who delights in other people who are in love with each other and even sort of awkwardly fumbling through that romance. You know what I mean? It's possible. And if we're not, and this is where, okay, maybe I sound a little too priestly and stereotypical when I'm saying this. If we can't be real with God in prayer, if I can't be real with God even in my loneliness, with my loneliness, then how do I expect to be real with other people? Because for me, like, Jesus is the safest person I could ever be with. Like, I know I won't be condemned by Jesus. Oh, and I'm like, yeah, I'm lonely, but I'm also kind of selfish, and I'm also a little self-centered right now, and this person really annoys me, or I'm really afraid of reaching out to this person. Like, what if they think that I'm a loser, or just I'm too needy, or something like that? If I can't be that real with Jesus in prayer, I don't have a hope in actually trusting someone else to do that. That said, Jesus has spoken to me through my friends, and I hope everyone has a memory of somebody who's been able to sort of break through the doom loop in the head, where somebody in your life and a friend in your life has been able to sort of cut through all the crap and actually like remind you that, no, I like being around you. Advice for people, something I wish I knew when I was younger about loneliness was that, sorry to preempt this, but it's just like, I feel like this is like kind of heading towards this, but something I wish I knew in my loneliest moments was that there are people who actually like being around me, and there are people who'd like to hear from me, and it's not something that I necessarily earned. It's like, oh shoot, like I have to be funny for these people to be around me, or I have to cook really good food for them to want to have dinner at my house, or I have to. Like, that phrase is something to watch out for. But then realizing and coming to own the fact, like, no, there are some people who just like me for me, and they've in some ways they've affirmed that. They've actually said that explicitly, or they've implied it by the way they have been with me. And that's something to give thanks to God for, because then that could help get me over my fear of connecting with people and reaching out to people. And instead of fear, there's courage and trust that, yes, like, you like to be with me and I like to be with you. Let's catch up. Let's see how we're doing with each other.
Wow. I was just thinking that's really good advice of like remembering that people do like you for who you are. So you kind of touched on this question already, but what do you wish you knew about loneliness that you do now know?
Mm-hmm. What I wish I knew before is that it's a common and normal thing. It's not a moral problem. I'm not lonely because it's a punishment, or that I did something that was worthy of other people's rejection, you know what I mean? Like, to divorce it from any sort of moral judgment and think of it as just a biological reality. Like, I'm made for connection. I'm made for deep connection to reveal what is inside of me to other people. Okay, that's something I wish I knew a long time ago. But what I said earlier too, I wish I knew that I can trust my friends and even people who I didn't think were friends. I can trust that they actually like being around me and that I'm a likable person and someone would like to hear from me. I can trust that. That's something I wish I knew. The other thing I wish I knew earlier too, and this is something that became really close to me in the Philippines, was that Jesus felt lonely too. And that was a huge revelation to me because it helped me connect also with Jesus in a heart level. When I thought about the loneliness that he experienced in the agony in the garden, in his passion and on the cross, I felt a little bit more united with the folks in the prison in the Philippines, and by extension, all of us when we're lonely. It's like, wow, when we're lonely, we're actually even more close. We're closer to Christ, who shared in our loneliness, who was lonely as well. And I can even connect with him on that level, I wish I knew that earlier.
And what are you most grateful for?
I'm grateful that I can share what I love in terms of the arts with so many wonderful people now. Like, I can share beautiful, like physically, like with an artwork, like I can physically share beautiful things with people. And people share that with me. Like, I'm in a place now where I'm surrounded by beauty and beautiful people who reflect that in the work that they do. And I'm so grateful to be around that. It's inspiring.
Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to Things I Wish I Knew. I know this episode is going to change the way I think about loneliness, but also how am I going to be less transactional in how I relate to people, and in also how I go to church. How about you? We'd love to hear how Justin's story resonated with you. And why not also tell us if you're facing an experience you wish you knew how to look at differently? It might just be something we can help with. You can find out more about this theme and other themes at thinkingfaith.org. Thank you again for listening, and I hope you'll join me next time on Things I Wish I Knew.